Well, okay, now we're live. I've got Ashley Coulter. Am I saying your last name correctly?
You
Coulter?
are. Yeah, you are.
We've got Ashley Coulter with us, our first guest on the podcast that we've been ramping up. Well, technically, we did have her as a guest on the in-person podcast at Kentucky, and she was one of our great speakers that came on, and really appreciate that, by the way.
Hey, no
Um,
problem.
And then also, you were one of our early and original members of the Parks and Rec Daily, or no, the Parks and Rec Done Right,
Yeah,
2020. How did you find us way back then?
I don't. I wish I was thinking about that. I wish I remembered because I don't. Um, it seems like forever ago. But yeah, no, I listened in on the Zoom calls at night and
Yeah.
uh, talked to made several little friends and we kept up for a while. I mean, it's kind of drifted now, but times were weird then. So things kind of developed or whatever. But yeah, I don't remember how I came across it. I don't know if it got shared. I don't know.
Well,
I don't
Sam
remember.
is actually Sam Diamond. I see him watching right now. He actually helped me create this. He was the mastermind behind the whole Facebook group, and we were all huddling in New Orleans in one of this huge house I had at the time, and we were, everybody was caged at the time. You couldn't leave your house.
Yep.
So
Yep.
we kind of came up with this brainchild here to start the Parks and Rec Done Right Facebook group, just so
Yeah.
that we could, continue to meet with you guys. And so that is the predecessor of the daily Parks and Rec show. And Ashley goes all the way back to those days back in 2024 when we were all really experiencing how much we needed our park systems.
Right. Yeah. I don't think anyone understood how important those green spaces were until we couldn't even be in those. Right.
Oh, right. How did y'all go through that? I remember in New Orleans, our park systems were packed. Like everybody discovered the park system during those times.
Yeah, so much the same. I was actually with another department at the time in my hometown, and I remember the day that the county judge made a press release that everything was being shut down, including Parks and Rec.
No way.
So we were shut down probably at least 2 months. We were closing park gates, running people out when they did sneak in. It was crazy. At the time, they kept all of our full time staff on, which in that department, I think we only had like 11 or 12. And then they ended up laying half of them off and leaving the remaining half of us there because unfortunately, the grass doesn't stop growing and there was some payroll that still had to be done and some bills that had to be paid and whatnot. So I think there were six of us that didn't have to be sent home and stuck it out through the entirety. So I like to consider myself essential during that time. I had
There
to
you
go to
go.
work every day like the nurses and the doctors. But then we started reopening in phases. So our golf course was one of the things. We had a 9-hole golf course there, and it was one of the very first things that opened back up. And then we had a lake with a campground. So that started. That was probably like the next phase, and really starting to phase in those outdoor um, single activities until we went to a full, reopened with masking and social distancing and limited capacities and this and that. So probably much like many other departments across the U.S.
Yeah. Yeah. What are the so are there some somewhat permanent changes that y'all have made as far as what affected y'all? Anything different that's kind
Um, well, in that particular department, we had an indoor swimming pool. The biggest thing there, we so once the facility was able to operate again, we started taking reservations for lap lane usage, and that did stick. I would assume they're still using that process. I can't. I haven't been gone from there about a year and a half now, but I know that up until my leaving, that was one thing that still it just worked really well for the patrons. So that was one thing that really, really stuck. And then um, out of that, our golf course there was able to implement a self-service range machine. So you could pay for your bucket of range balls on a self-service machine. So that was used, purchased with some of that federal COVID money that a lot of departments got across the U.S. So that was nice addition. So you basically have range balls daylight to dark, and you don't have to staff, you know, at the counter. So that was cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I noticed at least a lot of things on how we did business. I mean, I think the world was introduced to Zoom and we learned to work remotely. Even the DMV, you could do stuff remotely. I think I had what do you call this? When you transfer a title? Oh,
Like a
they
notary?
a notary. I did an online notary,
Oh,
and that had to be a child of the pandemic.
right, right. Yeah, so I've been on the KRPS board for several years, and that Zoom was huge. We did a ton of work through Zoom, our workshops. We did Friday CEU Zoom sessions. Um, Zoom, everyone got well versed in Zoom because of KRPS in
That's
Kentucky, at least.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely a big deal. Um, all right, so how did you think well, actually, before we get into the convention, let's give everybody a little backstory of how you got into Parks and Rec, and maybe even from the position of thinking back to when you were um, maybe younger, discerning of a career in this. So that because we've got a lot more college kids that are listening to our show.
Yeah.
I want to kind of let them know what you were thinking back then when you started moving towards this industry.
Okay, cool. When I was in high school, I just got my driver's license. My dad was like, "Girl, if you're gonna drive, you're gonna have to pay for gas, and that means you're gonna have to get a job." So, I applied at our local Parks and Rec department, where my grandfather was actually the park ranger at the time, and they had a little spot for me, filling vending machines and wiping down fitness equipment, and um, helping at our front fitness center desk and whatnot. And it was fun, and it was a high school job. Um, but I stayed on, and I started working at our front desk as one of the main receptionists there. So I would work different shifts, and that's checking people in, answering questions and phone calls, and making flyers. And that particular desk was like the hub of the entire park system, which it was like 900 and some acres. So you weren't just answering like fitness questions or pool questions. It was really the entire park. So athletics, campground, golf, you name it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, anyways, so I stayed doing that through college. When I graduated college, the administrative assistant position opened up. The lady had retired, and I got that position. So I was doing that. That was all the HR functions, paying bills, assisting the director there of parks, and then integrated marketing into my job and facilities management. I worked when I was with that department. I was there 18 and a half years. So let me say that first. So from the time I started in high school until I left about a year and a half ago, um, I worked under three different directors. The first director had been there nearly 40 years. So he retired, and then the new one transitioned in for I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 year period. And then they had a third one that transitioned in when the second one moved on. Anyways, my position title ended up getting changed to assistant director, which was more fitting. That third director thought, let's do a little bit of organizational restructure. He put two of us in assistant director positions because we were handling many of those duties. And so I did that, and that's what I was doing when I left there. So a year and a half from filling vending machines to being the assistant park director over 18 and a half years. When I took that job out of college, I loved the park, and of course it was in my hometown. Absolutely loved just being in my community, and that's I went to the park growing up. I really did like the job because it never really, even like filling vending machines and taking care of fitness equipment, was never the same thing like every day. It was always something different, and I really enjoyed that. So when I took that full time job, um, I was like, well, I'll do this. I got a business degree. I was not a Parks and Rec major. I got a business degree. Really didn't even I guess it never really occurred to me that you could go to school for Parks and Rec. So I don't know how I missed that because I think that would have been really right up my alley. But um, did the um, and really enjoyed doing the administrative stuff. And then as it developed over the years, all the other things, the marketing and the managing facilities and maintenance tasks and what have you, really, really enjoyed it because no 2 days at work was the same. Your tasks maybe be the same, but you weren't coming in every day and doing ABC, in that order. So, um, I,
Now, how maybe explain a little what how does you use your marketing degree in Parks and Recreation, or how has that evolved over the years? Because I know just marketing in general has just completely changed.
yeah, so I actually have a degree in management, not marketing, but
Mhm.
marketing has changed when I went through college. Um, Marketing was a lot of flyer and like physical content production. So seeing that evolve into the technology side, and that has been crazy. And I can see where like people get lost in not being able to keep up because things change so rapidly, especially now. I know you talked about AI creating content as quick as it's going to and does already. Um, but yeah, that's crazy to see like what I learned. Um, I'm not going to say how many years ago, but what I learned so many years ago versus how that's changed now is different. And I'll tell you, so I actually just finished my MBA yesterday. So I'm
Yes.
Thank you. I'm actually, and that's in business administration as well. So I'm finishing, or I'll graduate Saturday. But the marketing that I covered during the last this that study versus the first time with my undergrad is um, I don't know. It's crazy that how things evolve and how fast they change. But it is applicable to Parks and Rec because you have to, you're still getting your information out there and you have to do it effectively. And that so.
Yeah, yeah, and I've actually seen a huge shift here recently from, and maybe it's because there's so much content coming out where there used to be a few channels, a few legacy media companies, and then you had all the reporters, the gathering of the information kind of stuff, and now we've just seen an explosion of content creation, and AI is just amplifying that because the creators now can create the same volume of content with a fraction of the time invested. And what you're starting to see more is that people are almost having media exhaustion. They start to move more towards specific topics and local things that apply to them rather than this general just megaphone of news that now has been 1,000x'd. So now you've got thousands of megaphones just yelling and screaming and get great content at you. And so I think what I'm seeing is a lot more people siloing themselves into what's happening around me in my local community, and then what topics am I really, engaged with, and then they just kind of latch on to those streams of information and content coming out just to kind of block out all the other stuff that really they feel doesn't apply to them. And I really think the park systems have a great opportunity to spin up a podcast, kind of like I'm doing here, but just locally, because there's so much stuff that goes on in the park systems that people just aren't aware of.
Yeah, it's crazy, from department to department and city to city, like what different agencies are in charge of. So I'm with the city of Frankfurt now, and we oversee it's our downtown division, but all of our downtown landscaping and our Christmas decorations and the mall at St. Clair, which is our historic district, but all the flags and that go out. So and that's not something that we did in my old agency. We didn't have that. We had like public works with the city took care of those kind of things. So it's
Right.
really interesting how vast, um, everything is department to department. I know, in Kentucky we have some departments that maintain their cemeteries, and some are in charge of actually, doing art in their park. We have a partnership in Frankfurt with an agency that displays art, but some are, responsible for those things. So it's really interesting how diverse Parks and Rec can be.
Hmm. Yeah, and there really is. Like for instance, ours puts on a farmers market. Actually, they're one of four farmers markets, but one the city actually puts on, and then the others are hosted on city property. And then, like you said, there's graveyards, there's aquatic centers, there's
Mhm.
sports tourism that comes. I mean, if I was creating content for a city, I think you have a never-ending stream of information and stuff to invite people
Yeah,
to.
there's
And
always something going on.
there really is. There really is. So, what have you seen? One topic that I'd like to get your take on is the un. Let's see, how did they like unannounced park usage? Is that hitting y'all too?
What do you
Where
mean?
So I had someone at the NRPA. I had several directors said one of the things we're having to deal with is we're shifting away from scheduled events. That
Hmm.
is like teams and coaches and parents and all this kind of stuff. And now we have this like yoga people showing up and runners showing up and just unannounced events just popping up in the park unscheduled, and it's just they love the usage, but it
Yeah.
is.
We haven't had too much of that here. Occasionally we'll get. Um, it's funny, they were just telling me a story the other day about a pop up like summer day camp that happened. This has been several years ago, but and I know that you do hear about like run groups or yoga sessions or what have you. We haven't had a whole lot of that here in Frankfurt. It comes and goes. So we just try our best to handle it. But I do think we're seeing a trend probably heading in that direction. With at some point, we're collectively as a industry going to have to figure out how to handle because
Right.
it's hard when you're trying to schedule space and usage for your programming. How do you um, how do you handle pop up group? How do you know when you don't?
Well, I was a culprit to one of these groups. We started meeting. Uh, it was the Boring Run Club. It was just a few of us, and in the first few weeks, we just showed up every Saturday. And I was not even one of the organizers. I was just one of the early attendees. We had 30 people show up, and then the next week we had like 50. By week 3, we were over 100.
Wow.
8 weeks in, we had 700 people showing up for just show up and took
Yeah.
over Central Park and ran 3 miles inside the park in New Orleans.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah, that's a problem.
it was a parking problem. It was a problem in every direction.
Yeah, yeah. We here in Frankfurt, we have a really good emergency management team. So when we have like large groups and events, they're pretty involved in, making sure that we're following protocol with safety and we have enough exits and parking and all of that. So a 700 person pop up would definitely be crazy. I don't
Yeah,
know
that's.
how I don't know how you I don't know.
I
Stay
was
tuned.
causing the problem. I wasn't dealing with it. I need to talk to Larry. He's the director over that park, and he's probably cursing us.
Yeah.
But all right, so give people a rundown. I wanted for people that are regular attendees of their state convention to
Mhm.
really give a good pitch for why, if you're in the parks industry and maybe you haven't or you're on the fence of attending your local state annual conference, what do you tell them to kind of say this is what why you should attend?
Well, for absolutely networking purposes, if you want to make your job easier, which who doesn't, you need to meet people. Other attendees from other departments, other cities, vendors, anyone that is related to the industry at all, make them allies of yours. I don't know how many times that I've had an instance come up and I'm like, well, let me call so and so because I know that they do this, or let me ask about this as a solution to this because I don't really know what direction or how did they handle this. So the networking by far is the number one reason. Um, and believe it or not, like I was not a very outgoing people person when I started out attending
Believe
our conventions, our conferences, our annually. My first director that I started working under full time dragged me along, and I didn't want to go, but I went. I mean, I didn't really have a choice. He kind of made me. But man, I'm so thankful for that, and he made me go back the next year. And I think I've been every year for I think almost 15 years, other than the year my son was born, just because the way the dates fell, he was an infant. But I couldn't imagine not going. Like you catch up with these people. It really is like a close knit community. But yeah, definitely the networking. The education obviously is a huge bonus. And then seeing the vendors and what new trendy products are out there is also awesome. But the networking is number one. Number one.
Fantastic. That's great news. Now, how about for college kids? If you can, because I know a lot of college kids can attend these, and there's little scholarships for them, and they're really encouraged to. There's some stuff for them to do there. But what would you get out of that for if you're in college?
As far as attending,
Hmm.
so I think it's really beneficial for the college kids to come out and also make those connections because those directors and programmers and superintendents that are attending these conferences, they're going to be your next boss. So I think it's important that if you're able to attend or if you can make a way to attend, that you do get involved. You do, make it a point to introduce yourself. And if you know someone already that's there, like hop onto their coattail. Like I stood up at conference this year when we were having a panel when they asked for additional comments, and I spoke on the professional side because we had this similar conversation, and I was like, I think it's just as important for us as seasoned professionals that we find a leech, for lack of better words, that we drag along because if it hadn't have been for my first director dragging me along, I don't know if I would have. I don't. I voluntarily wouldn't have went. And I was really young then, so I think that it's important that once I think it's our responsibility too to make sure that those individuals get involved and now they have their own responsibilities as well, but I think that for the success of an organization, it's important that we nurture them and find make sure that they are introduced to people and foster that environment for them, help them.
Yeah, and that is important. I think to get that early exposure and to maybe have somebody kind of dragging you along, uh, maybe pushing you outside your comfort zones. Uh,
Hmm.
and really, these conventions that I've attended, gosh, I've attended tons of these in different states. I can't get over how much this familial feel where you're just, it feels like a big family that just meets once a year. It's like a family reunion across the
It,
state.
it really is. Yeah, you become friends with people that you otherwise wouldn't have ever met, but it's so you have friends that are all across the board in different stages of life, so it's not you're not just in a group with 30 some year olds um, chatting about what 30 some year olds talk about.
Right.
You're friends with people that are grandparents and friends with people that are widowed and friends with people that are just got their first full time job and
Right.
students, and so it's fun.
Right. And then lastly, I've always encouraged a lot of the vendors, or even vendors that never even attend this, that this is a great place where you can meet, can do a lot of good business, and you get to meet people in a very relaxed social environment because there's always nighttime activities. There's always dinners and lunches and breakfasts, and then all kind of fun stuff that the event organizers put on. But if you had to encourage any vendors, or have you ever do y'all use vendors that y'all find there? Maybe tell us
Yeah,
about.
so I think it's important for vendors to attend to make those connections. You're probably not going to sell them a product on the floor that day, but what you're doing is planting seeds. So when they get back to the office and they have a project or funding come up, they're going to be like, "Oh, I met, Craig at conference, and he sells this, and that's part of this plan." And they're probably going to reach out to you, and you're starting those conversations. So I think it's important as vendors that you are equally as involved so that you can make those connections as well because they're part of that family too. There's those vendors are just as a part of the family as the professionals that attend.
Oh yeah, yeah. A lot of the vendors that I've gotten close to over the years. They've been attending the same state convention for 30 years, and they've been selling playground equipment or, chemicals for the swimming pools or, fencing for the baseball fields and stuff. I mean, there's this, and there really is like a long, I'm glad you said it's more like planting seeds, because if you've worked with a city before, any municipal, things don't move fast through a city as far as it has to be planned out well in advance. And then they have to earmark funds for it. So if you're looking for a quick sell, you're
Yeah.
probably in the wrong industry.
Not happening. I think it's also important to mention that if you have the opportunity to get involved with your state organization, you should absolutely run with it. So my second director he was involved into KRPS and he started taking me along. So my first director took me to the conferences. My second director started taking me to the meetings because he was on the board. And so since then, I started out as a committee chair for the awards, and then that led to filling a vacancy in my district on the board. And then I did that for a couple of years, and then next thing you know, I was voted as president-elect, and then I served as president, and then I was past president, and I'm still on the board now. And I absolutely love serving on the board. I feel way more plugged in being on the board, but I've chaired, the auction committee, and I've chaired the awards committee, and I've chaired the program committee. But if you have the opportunity to get involved with your state organization, even if it's just on the committee level, absolutely do that, because I think that keeps you more plugged in and more glued into what's going on with others and with your state.
Now, do y'all meet outside of maybe tell us the annual schedule? Like, what do y'all do outside the meeting?
So our leadership board meets once a quarter, so January, April, August, and then at conference in November. And then our executive committee meets monthly. So that we actually just met yesterday. Was a member at large, but I've been appointed to fill the secretary position because the secretary took the treasurer position from elections at conference. So we meet once a month to prepare for those quarterly meetings with the leadership board. So I think we have 21 board seats total on our leadership board, and then our executive committee is 4. It's a president, president-elect, treasurer, secretary, and a member at large. So there's 5 of those.
Right.
So, and then the committees will meet as needed. So the awards committee, for example, for conference, they meet virtually several times a year, but they won't start really meeting heavily until closer to that deadline, for awards for conference. And conference committee is the same way. Programs committee is kind of the same way. So a lot of moving parts. But you see a lot of individuals that serve on a lot of these committees. So, some people may serve on 2 or 3 committees.
Yeah. Tell us what it was like to be president. What was any pressures there? Was it fun?
No, it was really fun, and I was really sad to see it come to an end when it did. We had a ton of programming that year, so we did workshops and leadership forums, and our Friday CEU Zoom credits. I think that was in 2022, so it's, I guess, or maybe it was in 21. I don't know, 21 or 22. So it was post-COVID. But I ran my butt off that year. I tried to go to a ton of events and parks and across the state that were members of our organization, mainly because I'm a nerd and I want to see and do all the things. But there wasn't any pressure as far as leading the organization because we have a great state and a great members and a great team of board members. But I had a lot of fun, and I enjoyed that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so let me see if I explain it correctly, but you do get nominated. So for those of you that are maybe new to the Parks and Rec industry, the state association is run by an executive director, but every year they have from its members, people like Ashley will step up and run for president, get nominated as president. And it's isn't it a 3-year commitment where you have president-elect, president, and past president? And did I hit everything pretty accurately as far as how it works?
Yeah. So you get nominated, and then the voting is done at conference. So the very last day of conference, when we have our close of the business meeting, they announce who won the seats, and then the new board is sworn in. And yeah, that's how it works. You got it.
Yeah. Now, what do you do as president-elect? What do you do as president? And what do you do as president?
So you're different. You handle different committees. You chair different committees. So the year I was president elect, I think we switched the way we had a bylaw change, and I got lucky and got to do the conference program, like educational session planning, like 2 years in a row. So that's not typical, and typically that's it's a hard job. So you assemble a committee and you have to find all the session speakers for conference, which I think we have usually 27 slots to fill. So it's kind of hard to get people to fill those slots. So and I don't know now. I can't remember off the top of my head who does what, but president elect will do like chair the program committee, which is that person who finds all the educational sessions. So you're not doing it by yourself. You have a committee under you, right?
Right.
And then past president will handle things like board nominations, finding people to fill those or get nominations to fill those seats and that. So and then as president, you're kind of handling the business of the um, organization alongside working with the executive director and that. So handling the actual formality of the way the meetings go and that. So
Now, who was executive director? Was it Terry or was it someone?
yeah, it was Terry. Yeah,
Yeah, she's been 8 years, I think. Has she done this for?
I think so. Yeah, about that. If not, maybe a little bit longer. But she's great to work with. Um, she has a lot of institutional knowledge, and she's been a real good partner through my stint as president elect and past president, and as a board member. She's real responsive and gets you what you need.
And if I remember correctly, she was, and it's very common. I think she was a park director, and then a lot of times after retirement, they'll come into that role of executive director for
Yeah,
this.
she worked in aquatics which I'm sure you'll have her on the show and she can give you her whole her
Yeah.
background. But she's like the aquatics like individual of Kentucky. She knows her pools.
Mhm. Oh, she has a great personal story when she was little about swimming and why that's her passion. But yeah, I'll let her tell that story.
Yeah, I don't know if I've heard that.
Oh gosh, you got to hear it. It's powerful. It's a very powerful story. Speaking of powerful stories, you have to tell that story again about the watering of the grass.
Of the golf course.
Yes, it was one of your funniest
Oh man. Yeah,
funniest.
I love the golf course. So in my director or deputy director position now, there's two of us. And we have a director above us, but our the properties and staff are pretty much split down the middle. And I have the 18-hole golf course under my purview, and I love it. The golf course is fun. There's always something going on, and I love it. But this past summer was very hot and dry here, and my staff had to spend a lot of time watering the greens. We do a lot of irrigating, but sometimes we have to hand water, especially when it's real hot. But a particular day, we got a call from some members that were, I say members, it was a league that was on the course, and they said that the water was on a hole, and if they got wet and it needed to go off right now. And so they called the pro shop, and the pro shop called the maintenance team. They went out and shut it off. And it's hard. We have a irrigation system that's nearly 50 years old, and it's constantly, the timers aren't exactly 100% efficient and effective. Constantly with leaks and whatnot. So that's a whole nother, probably $750,000 project that we're not going to have funded anytime soon, right? So we just do the best we can. So we were on a course, and I say it was myself and my golf team, my maintenance team. We were talking about a project, and during this league, these two carts are driving by, going to their next hole, and they scream out, "It's hot out here! We need water!" And knowing about the call that had come in that morning, because I think the staff was a little upset because they're like, we're doing the best we can. We can't water around the golfers. Every golfer, they try to be courteous and whatnot, but sometimes you just can't help it with the way that they're timed and whatnot. But so I looked at them and they looked at me. I was like, did that just happen? I was like, but we literally just had the water on, and this wasn't the same hole by any means, and it probably wasn't even the same individual, but just the it's just another day in Parks and Rec.
Right. Another day in Parks and Rec. There's always something.
It's like, man, it's like, you can't, sometimes you just don't feel like you're winning. In the grand scheme of things, you are, but
Yeah.
that was just, that story will stick.
That's a good one to recall. Now, what can we do better as far as the Parks and Rec Daily Show? What would you like to see as far as the Facebook group? I know we're actually live streaming this on X, on LinkedIn, and on YouTube. But what kind of direction, topics would you like to see us cover?
So so these interviews I think are going to be interesting. I like hearing like personal accounts. Like I think the interviews with other people. I think it's going to be interesting to see how differently and how the same we do differently. Right? Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I think that'll be something I would like to see. Moving forward.
Yeah, and I've actually got a great lineup of this. Really, I think this week is probably going to end up being more of a technical week. As much as I wanted to get it all done in 1 week, I've still got a lot more to do. Moving stuff around. I've made this kind of library my studio, so I've still got a lot more to do here.
Yeah, what happened to all the books? Because like your first episode, there was all the books.
So we actually had some bugs come into the house, and I had to everything out. They had to spray the house down. You had to leave the house for like 3 or 4 days. So Monday I had the show. I was ready. I was all excited. Tuesday I snuck in here just before the fumigation started. And then like the next day I did it from my car, and the next day I did it from a coffee house.
You really have had a week then.
It's been crazy. So I've got my books in a bag on the floor right now. So hopefully by tomorrow we'll have them up and running. But that's media anytime. And in Friday, I was like, I promise next week we're going to go live at noon every day. And just because I said that Monday, my computer crashed. So I had to go buy a new one.
That's what happens.
What happens when you tempt the fate of saying we're going to be there on time. But yeah, I'm really excited about the interviews we got lined up. And we've got anywhere from, people that manage small parks departments to really big ones and everything in between. So it's not just about getting, the huge park and rec directors that a lot of people almost can't understand their world because it's so different when you run a small park system.
It's crazy. I think I don't think it matters size wise. I think we still all deal with the same issues. It's just we deal with them on different, levels. But I'm looking forward to it, and I love Parks and Rec. I can't imagine having ever taken a job in another direction. I never, like I said, didn't realize, I guess, that Parks and Rec was a job, and then I ended up here, and I'm like, man, like I really come to work every day loving what I do. So.
It really is. And I can tell you, your industry has got to be one of the leading industries when it comes to retention.
Yeah, there are not positions that open up. Hence, I was somewhere for 18 and a half years. So that's a long time. And you don't see a lot of turnover because I think people really do love.
You want a position in Parks and Rec, you almost have to wait for somebody to die or finally have some major event.
Or someone who's been there for 40 years to decide that they're going to retire. It's very common. It's very common. But.
Yeah, it's hard to get in. But once you get in, you're in for life. It's like the mafia. They let you in and they don't let you go.
I think so. Yeah, and believe it or not, and I know everyone else is going to agree, we don't play all day. It's hard sometimes.
Yes. Oh, I know. No, y'all work, and you get the most random stuff thrown at you, and you're probably thinking, how does this fall in the Parks Department's responsibilities?
Yeah, I mean, my golf maintenance team was tearing carpet out of my golf shop this morning from water damage, and I was down there sleeping on the floor, and I'm in my dress clothes today. So you just never know. That's right. And I love that. Yeah. I've worn many pair of dress shoes because I had to go hiking unexpectedly with, left boots behind or something.
Yeah.
But I love
it's a great career. I highly encourage anyone that's interested in like the outdoors or building their community or, working with sports, aquatics. I mean, there's so many different things you can work with. And
Yeah, and you don't have to go to school for it. I didn't. I mean, I have a pretty generic business degree, but you learn hands on. Like
yeah,
you really pick up your experience from being, in it.
that's right.
You jump all the way in.
Right. Nothing could prepare you anyway for a day in the life of Parks and
Mm-mm, mm-mm. Sometimes I wish we could have like bring along somebody day, and like here's what I do. Like you
Maybe
just
that's
never
what
know.
I'll come there. I'll come there and do the whole thing live. We'll do like a live day.
You could wear a GoPro and then
That,
all day long follow me around and commentate on my crazy adventures or something.
that's it. That's going to be the next version, the next iteration of the Daily Show.
This
Is
look, this may be we may be onto something here.
I think we are. I'm having fun, so I'm chasing this thing all the way to the end. I'm on the train all the way to the last stop.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. I think it's awesome.
Yeah. Well, Ashley, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Uh, I'll wrap things up here after I let you go, but let me know. I'd love to do this again, maybe in a few months. And are you going to NRPA, in Orlando, or do you know?
Well, I hope my boss is tuning in, and I hope he's budgeting for it because I'd really like to. I went to St. Louis, maybe 2016, whenever St. Louis was just recently, which I think was like 2016. It was so much fun, and I haven't been back because of budget reasons and whatever. But send me to Orlando. Send me to Orlando.
Opponent to the entire industry. We need her there.
Yeah, I want to go.
That's it. Well, Ashley, thank you so much. We'll be in touch, and let me know if we can ever do anything to help y'all get the
All
word
right.
out.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye bye. All right, that was Ashley Coulter. She is one of our all stars with Parks and Recreation over in Kentucky. One of my, for those of you who don't know, I went to school in Kentucky. I was a cheerleader there at UK, and so I went there. I had not been back since college, and it is just a gorgeous state. If you have not been to Kentucky, they have one of the most gorgeous park systems that was built a long time ago by the U.S. government and then handed to them to maintain. And so they have these gorgeous old facilities that are sitting on top of these mountains and lakes and everything. And that's where they hold their conventions. So it's beautiful. But like most states, they hold their conventions. A lot of the states hold their conventions at phenomenal places. So if you've never been to a state convention, especially if you're a college kid and you're considering doing something in Parks and Recreation or anything like that, you should definitely attend one of those. I highly recommend it. We met a couple of college kids there that I interviewed, and we're going to get them on the show as well. All right, so had some technical issues yesterday. My computer just decided to, leave the planet, and so I had to go buy a new one early this morning and didn't get it up and running. I've also got my Starlink. I got it plugged in, couldn't get it running for the show. Hopefully tomorrow we will be running on a Starlink satellite dish, which will be really cool because that'll help us to be able to go remote and on the road, which is a lot of what it takes when you're going to these conventions and stuff, some on-site things, because some of these are in the middle of nowhere. But please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're starting to upload more videos. I tried to go live on Facebook, but the broadcast did not I couldn't figure out how to get Ashley on. So I just stopped that one. We'll do the live stream through StreamYard, and then we'll post it here shortly on Facebook so the Facebook group can see it. But tune in next week. We have two guests coming in. Cameron and Matthew are both, well, Matthew's threatening to come in. I think he's going to come in Tuesday or Wednesday. We'll do a similar interview. He's in Alabama and Cameron's over in Kentucky as well. So we'll be getting some more Parks and Rec directors to come and tell their story. And if you know anyone that would be good for me to interview and to bring onto the show, please make a recommendation for me. And lastly, I posted that I want to take the Parks and Rec, the Daily Show, the Daily Parks and Rec Show on the road. We're going to attend 10 conventions this year. And then we're also going to attend in addition to that, we're going to attend NRPA in Orlando next year. So that's going to be our 2025 schedule. We'll do NRPA and then 10 other state conventions. So if you would like us to attend your convention and do a full-on podcast like we did for the whole convention, where we interviewed college kids that attended, we interviewed directors, we interviewed some of the vendors that sponsored the events. If you would like us to come create you a promo video and do a podcast for you, kind of like we're doing with Ashley, but all live and on site, all the cameras and lights and all this stuff, we bring Nate. He's a great producer of this kind of content and video. He's a master and an artist when it comes to this. So he comes along with us, and we want to attend 10 state conventions in 2025. We have not selected all 10, but obviously there's 50, and it's going to be a first come, first serve. So if you would like to throw your hat in the ring, please reach out to me as soon as possible so that we can get y'all on the books and see y'all in person. So we will do this again tomorrow. Every day. My goal is every day, noon Eastern. I'm in Central, so that's 11 for me. That's going to be 10 Mountain and 9 a.m. Pacific, if I'm thinking that correctly. And we will do a daily show all about Parks and Rec to really raise awareness about what we do in Parks and Rec, to lift the industry up, and to really give you guys, a big megaphone to blast out to the world so that we can all enjoy our park systems. If you're working in Parks and Rec, thank y'all so much for all the work y'all do. A lot of you are unsung heroes. We appreciate you maintaining our park systems for us and giving us a beautiful place to unwind and unplug and go see nature and just live in the community. Thank you, guys. Again, Craig LeBlanc with the Daily Parks and Rec Show. We'll see y'all again here tomorrow at noon Eastern. Thanks.